The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called hastily, the ancient chamber filled with representatives from dozens of species. Ambassador Zephyr of the Republic stood at the central podium, her scaled hands trembling as she addressed the assembly. The holographic display behind her showed star charts marking human expansion territories, each red dot representing a colony that had appeared seemingly overnight. "Honored delegates," Zephyr began, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much. "I stand before you today not as a diplomat, but as a survivor. 3 cycles ago, I was a fleet commander in the Navy. Today, I am the sole voice of warning against a species that the Council has consistently underestimated." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The delegate, his 4 arms folded in skepticism, clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Commander Zephyr, we appreciate your concern, but humans are a young species. They have barely achieved faster-than-light travel. What threat could they possibly pose to civilizations that have ruled the stars for?" Zephyr's eyes darkened, memories of burning ships and impossible human tactics flooding back. "That is precisely the attitude that cost us the Battle of 442. We believed their youth made them weak. We were catastrophically wrong." She activated the holographic display, showing footage from the battle. Sleek dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer long and bristling with plasma cannons, engaged a human fleet that appeared laughably outmatched. The human ships were smaller, their hulls and patched, clearly repurposed civilian vessels hastily converted for war. "Look at this engagement," Zephyr continued, pointing to the display. "Our intelligence suggested the humans had 43 ships. Our fleet consisted of 120 vessels, including 3 heavy carriers. By all tactical analysis, this should have been a massacre." The footage showed the battle's opening moments. Ships moved in perfect formation, their plasma batteries lighting up space with coordinated volleys. The human ships scattered like startled prey, breaking formation and fleeing in apparent panic. "We believed we had routed them," Zephyr said, her voice heavy with regret. "Admiral ordered pursuit, dividing our fleet to hunt down the fleeing humans. It was exactly what they wanted us to do." The display shifted to show what happened next. The scattered human ships didn't continue fleeing. Instead, they turned with impossible precision, each group targeting isolated vessels. What had seemed like panicked retreat was revealed as a masterfully executed trap. "They used our confidence against us," Zephyr explained. "While we celebrated their apparent cowardice, they were analyzing our formation, identifying weak points, calculating firing solutions. The humans have a saying, 'All warfare is deception.' They embodied this principle completely." The crystalline representative, whose species communicated through harmonic resonance, sang a questioning note. Zephyr nodded understanding. "Yes, honored crystal singer, their technology was inferior. Their ships were slower, their weapons had less range, their shields were primitive by our standards. But they compensated with something we had never encountered before: absolute ruthlessness combined with tactical brilliance." The footage continued, showing human ships ramming vessels, their crews sacrificing themselves to create opportunities for their fleet mates. One human destroyer, its hull breached and atmosphere venting, continued firing even as it died, its guns trained on the command ship until the very moment it exploded. "They fight like predators," Zephyr said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Not just any predators, but apex predators. Every other species in this galaxy evolved as prey animals, or at most omnivores who occasionally hunted. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a death world where survival meant killing or being killed every single day." She paused, letting this sink in. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably. The concept of a species evolving primarily as hunters was alien to most galactic civilizations. "Their planet Earth is a nightmare by galactic standards," Zephyr continued. "Gravity nearly twice what most of us consider comfortable. An atmosphere so corrosive it would dissolve carapaces within hours. Weather patterns that include rotating wind storms capable of destroying cities, seismic activity that regularly reshapes continents, and temperature variations that would kill most of us." The delegate, whose species most closely resembled Earth cats, mewed softly in what Zephyr recognized as distress. And yet they not only survived this world, they thrived on it. They developed persistence hunting, chasing prey across vast distances until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. They learned to track wounded animals for days, following blood trails across continents. They domesticated wolves, turning the planet's other major predator into their ally. The holographic display shifted to show human evolutionary charts, comparing human development to other galactic species. Where most civilizations showed steady technological and cultural advancement over millions of years, human development was explosive and recent. "Look at their timeline," Zephyr said, pointing to the display. "They went from using stone tools to nuclear weapons in 10,000 years. Most species take 100 times longer to achieve similar advancement. They reach space in less than a century after achieving powered flight. Their development isn't just fast, it's frighteningly accelerated." The Aquarian representative, speaking through its translator, gurgled a question about human social structures. Zephyr nodded grimly. "Yes, their society reflects their predatory nature. They organize into hierarchical groups led by alpha individuals. They compete constantly, not just for resources, but for status, territory, and breeding rights. This competition drives innovation at a pace that would be considered impossible for any other species." She activated new footage, showing human colonies under construction. Massive machines stripped entire asteroids bare within days, while human workers labored in conditions that would kill most galactic species. They expand like an apex species as well. When humans find a new world, they don't adapt to it. They terraform it, reshaping entire planetary ecosystems to suit their needs. They see themselves as the dominant life form wherever they go. The chamber erupted in worried discussions. Several delegates demanded more information about human military capabilities. Zephyr raised her hands for silence. "That brings me to why I'm here today," she said. 3 days ago, human scouts entered the vegan system. They made no hostile moves, claimed to be conducting routine exploration. But I've seen their exploration before. It always precedes expansion. She activated a real-time display showing the current positions of known human fleets. Red dots scattered across dozens of star systems, each representing confirmed human presence. They're not just exploring randomly. There's a pattern here, a strategic purpose. They're mapping trade routes, identifying resource-rich systems, cataloging potential threats. The delegate clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Zephyr translated for the others. "The Hive Queen asks why we don't simply negotiate with them, establish boundaries, create treaties. I attempted this after the Battle of 442. I met with their commander, Admiral Sarah." The display showed a recording of that meeting. Admiral appeared to be a typical human female, shorter than most galactic species, with brown hair and alert eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. She wore a simple military uniform, no elaborate decorations or symbols of authority beyond small rank insignia. She was polite, professional, even friendly, Zephyr said. But underneath that civilized exterior, I could sense something that chilled me. She spoke about coexistence, about mutual benefit and peaceful exploration. But her eyes never stopped moving, never stopped assessing threats and opportunities. Even in peaceful negotiation, she was hunting. The recording showed Admiral's response to questions about human expansion. Her words were diplomatic, but Zephyr highlighted the subtle implications behind each statement. Phrases like securing human interests and ensuring the safety of our people that sounded reasonable but carried undertones of territorial claim. The most telling moment came when I asked about their long-term goals in our sector, Zephyr continued. She said, and I quote, "Humans go where we need to go, we take what we need to take, we do what we need to do to survive and prosper, but we prefer to do these things as friends rather than enemies." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The human admiral hadn't threatened anyone directly, but the message was clear. Human expansion would continue regardless of galactic opinion. The only choice was whether other species would be friends or obstacles. That's when I realized we weren't dealing with just another spacefaring civilization, Zephyr said. We were dealing with a species that views the entire galaxy as their hunting ground. They don't seek permission to expand because they don't recognize any authority higher than their own survival imperative. She activated final footage, showing recent human colonies in disputed territories. Worlds that had been claimed by other species for centuries were now hosting human settlements. In each case, the humans had arrived peacefully, established small outposts, then gradually expanded until they dominated the entire system. They don't conquer through direct aggression, Zephyr explained. They infiltrate, they establish footholds, they demonstrate their value as trading partners and allies. Then, slowly but inexorably, they become indispensable. Before anyone realizes what's happening, they've become the dominant power in the region. The ethereal delegate, whose species existed partially in subspace, phased into full reality to speak. What do you propose we do? They haven't violated any galactic laws. Their expansion appears legal under current treaties. Zephyr turned to face the delegate directly. That's exactly the problem. They're playing by our rules while thinking like apex predators. We created our laws assuming all species think like we do, value what we value, want what we want. Humans want to survive and dominate. Everything else is secondary. She paused, gathering her thoughts for her final argument. I'm not suggesting we declare war on humanity. That would be disastrous for everyone. But we need to understand what we're dealing with. Humans aren't just another member species to welcome into the galactic community. They're apex predators who have learned to use civilization as a hunting strategy. The holographic display returned to the star chart, showing human expansion vectors projected into the future. Within 50 years, the model predicted human presence in nearly every major system in their sector of the galaxy. Look at these projections, Zephyr said. This isn't random expansion, it's strategic positioning. They're placing themselves along major trade routes near resource-rich systems in positions where they can influence or control galactic commerce. They're not just joining galactic civilization, they're positioning themselves to dominate it. She took a deep breath, preparing for her final warning. Honored delegates, I've spent my entire career studying military strategy and relations. I've fought against raiders, negotiated with pirates, and dealt with every form of aggression the galaxy has produced. But I've never encountered anything like humanity. The chamber was completely silent now, every delegate focused on her words. They combine the strategic thinking of the most advanced civilizations with the relentless drive of apex predators. They adapt faster than any species I've ever seen, learn from their mistakes with frightening efficiency, and never, ever give up once they've committed to a course of action. Zephyr's voice grew heavy with the weight of prophecy. If we continue to treat them like just another spacefaring species, if we keep applying normal diplomatic and military thinking to our interactions with them, we will wake up one day to find that humanity has become the dominant power in the galaxy without anyone quite understanding how it happened. She stepped back from the podium, her warning delivered. I'm not asking you to fear them, honored delegates. I'm asking you to respect them for what they truly are, the first apex predator species to achieve interstellar travel. Everything we think we know about galactic politics and military strategy may need to be reconsidered in light of that reality. The chamber erupted in heated debate as delegates struggled to process the implications of Zephyr's warning. Some dismissed her concerns as the paranoid ramblings of a defeated commander. Others demanded immediate action to contain human expansion. A few wise delegates began quietly making plans to establish better diplomatic relations with humanity before it was too late. But in the depths of space, Admiral Sarah received reports of the Galactic Council's emergency session. She smiled slightly, making notes about which species seemed most concerned about human expansion. Intelligence was always useful, and understanding alien fears was just another form of strategic advantage. The hunt for galactic dominance was proceeding exactly as planned. Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the UES Persistence, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main viewer. The Nexus Trade Hub was one of the galaxy's most important commercial centers, a neutral zone where dozens of species conducted business under the protection of ancient treaties. It was also the perfect place to demonstrate exactly why Zephyr's warning should have been taken more seriously. Admiral, we're receiving standard docking clearance from Nexus Control, reported Lieutenant Commander from the communications station. They're directing us to Commercial Dock 77 Alpha. Nodded, her eyes never leaving the display. The station was enormous, easily 50 kilometers across, with docking arms extending in all directions like the legs of some massive spider. Ships from across the galaxy moved in carefully regulated patterns around it, following traffic control guidelines that had been established centuries before humans had even achieved space flight. Take us in, Commander Park, ordered. Standard approach, full compliance with traffic control. The Korean officer at the helm acknowledged the order, guiding the human dreadnought through the complex dance of interstellar commerce. To any observer, it would appear that the humans were simply another trading mission, seeking to establish commercial relationships in this vital hub of galactic trade. They would be completely wrong. 3 weeks had passed since Zephyr's warning to the Galactic Council, and the various species had reacted exactly as human intelligence had predicted. They had begun mobilizing their remaining fleets, convinced that military preparation was the answer to the human threat. They had attempted to create an alliance of species opposed to human expansion, achieving little beyond revealing which governments were most concerned about human activities. Most tellingly, the Crystalline Consortium had begun restricting human access to certain trade routes, believing they could contain human expansion through economic pressure. It was this last action that had prompted its current mission. "Dock secure, Admiral," Park reported as magnetic clamps engaged with a solid thunk that reverberated through the ship's hull. "All systems nominal." "Very good," said, standing from her command chair. "Commander Torres, you have the bridge. I'll be attending the Trade Council meeting in Conference Room Delta 7. Her executive officer, a tall woman with the weathered look of someone who had served on frontier colonies, nodded understanding. "Aye, Admiral, good hunting." Smiled at the phrase. It had become something of a tradition among human officers, acknowledging their species' predatory heritage while wishing each other success in whatever challenges lay ahead. Today's challenge would require all of her diplomatic skills, combined with just enough demonstration of human capabilities to make a point that would echo across the galaxy. The Trade Council meeting was held in one of Nexus Station's grand conference chambers, a circular room designed to accommodate the various environmental needs of different species. Atmospheric processors created distinct zones for air breathers, methane breathers, and the few silicon-based life forms that participated in galactic commerce. As entered the chamber, conversation gradually died away. Representatives from 24 species turned to study the human admiral, many of them having heard Zephyr's warnings, but never having encountered a human in person. What they saw was probably not what they expected. Appeared utterly unremarkable by galactic standards. She was shorter than most species, lacking the impressive physical presence of warriors or the elegant grace of diplomats. Her simple black uniform bore minimal decoration, just rank insignia and a small patch showing the Earth-Luna system. She carried no weapons, made no threatening gestures, and smiled politely as she was introduced to the assembled delegates. "Admiral," said Trade Coordinator Vex, a hegemony bureaucrat whose species resembled nothing so much as oversized beetles. "Welcome to the Nexus Trade Council. I understand you wish to address recent restrictions on human commercial activities." "Indeed," replied, taking her assigned seat with fluid grace. "I hope we can resolve this misunderstanding quickly and amicably." What followed was 2 hours of careful diplomatic discussion about trade routes, shipping schedules, and commercial regulations. Listened attentively as various delegates explained their concerns about human expansion, their fears about disruptive competition, and their desire to maintain stable commercial relationships throughout the galaxy. She responded to each concern with patient professionalism, offering compromises, suggesting collaborative ventures, and generally presenting herself as a reasonable partner in galactic commerce. Several delegates began to relax, wondering if Zephyr's warnings had been exaggerated. Then Coordinator Vex made a critical mistake. "Of course, Admiral," he said with the casual arrogance of someone who believed himself to be negotiating from a position of strength. "You must understand that humans are still newcomers to galactic civilization. Perhaps it would be best if your expansion proceeded more slowly, with greater consultation with established powers. The Crystalline Consortium has suggested that human colonies should be limited to systems that don't interfere with existing trade relationships." Smile didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Every human in the room would have recognized the expression, an ancestral warning sign that had once helped early hominids identify when a predator was about to strike. Unfortunately, none of the aliens present had evolved the ability to read human microexpressions. "That's an interesting suggestion, Coordinator," said mildly. "However, I'm afraid it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature." She activated her personal data pad, and the chamber's main display screen came alive with star charts. "You see, we humans have been studying galactic trade patterns for some time now. We've identified several inefficiencies in the current system that we believe we can help address." The display showed the major trade routes connecting different sectors of the galaxy, with flow charts indicating cargo volumes, shipping times, and profit margins. It was impressive analysis, but nothing that seemed threatening. "For example," continued, The Vega shipping lane currently requires 6 intermediate stops for fuel and maintenance, adding weeks to shipping times and significantly increasing costs. Human engineering could reduce that to 2 stops, cutting shipping costs by 30%. Several delegates nodded appreciatively. This was exactly the kind of beneficial partnership they had hoped to encourage. Of course, added casually, implementing these improvements would require human facilities at strategic points along the route. We would need basing rights, mining concessions, and preferential trading status to make the investment worthwhile. The delegates began to look less comfortable as the implications became clear. Continued her presentation, methodically demonstrating how human improvements to galactic commerce would require extensive human infrastructure throughout the galaxy. Now, regarding the consortium's suggestion about limiting human expansion, said, her voice still perfectly pleasant, I'm afraid that's simply not possible. The display changed to show human population projections and resource requirements. The numbers were staggering. Humanity was experiencing explosive population growth, driven by advances in medicine and agricultural technology. Within a century, human space would need to expand dramatically just to accommodate their growing numbers. You see, explained, humans don't just want to expand, we need to expand. Our survival as a species depends on it. This isn't a matter of policy preference or diplomatic negotiation, it's biological imperative. Coordinator Vex's mandibles clicked nervously. Surely reasonable accommodations can be reached. The galaxy is vast. There's room for everyone. Nodded agreeably. Absolutely. That's why I'm confident we can resolve this situation without conflict. She paused, letting that word hang in the air. After all, none of us want to see what happens when humans feel genuinely threatened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Activated a new display showing footage from the Battle of 442. But this wasn't the same footage Zephyr had shown the Galactic Council. This was recorded from human ships, showing the battle from the perspective of the Predators. This engagement taught us a great deal about galactic military doctrine, narrated as the footage showed ships moving in perfect formation. Most species fight like they evolved, as prey animals using technology to level the playing field against natural predators. Formation flying, overwhelming firepower, safety in numbers. All very sensible tactics for species that instinctively fear being hunted. The footage showed the human ships scattering, appearing to flee in panic. We fight like we evolved as apex predators. We use deception, misdirection, and tactical patience to create opportunities. Then we strike with focused violence designed to eliminate threats as efficiently as possible. The display showed the devastating human counterattack that had destroyed the fleet. Ships ramming their targets, crews sacrificing themselves to take out enemy vessels, human fighters continuing to attack even as their ships burned around them. The loss that battled the moment they assumed we thought like they did, continued. They expected us to value individual survival over mission success, to retreat when faced with superior firepower, to behave rationally according to prey animal psychology. But humans don't think like prey animals. She stood up, moving to the center of the chamber where all delegates could see her clearly. Despite her small stature, she somehow seemed to dominate the room. Let me tell you a story about human evolution, she said conversationally. 2 million years ago, our ancestors lived on the African savanna alongside some of the most dangerous predators ever to evolve. Lions, leopards, hyenas, wild dogs. Any one of these species could easily kill an individual human. The display showed images of Earth's prehistoric predators, massive carnivores that dwarfed even the largest humans. Logic would suggest that humans should have evolved as prey animals, developing better camouflage, faster running speed, or more effective hiding behaviors. Instead, we evolved as persistence hunters. New images showed early humans tracking wounded prey across vast distances, following blood trails for days until their targets collapsed from exhaustion. We learned that we didn't need to be stronger or faster than our prey. We just needed to be more patient, more persistent, and more willing to endure suffering to achieve our goals. His voice took on a hypnotic quality as she continued. We developed the ability to track injured animals across continents. We learned to work in coordinated groups, sharing information and resources to bring down prey much larger than ourselves. Most importantly, we learned that giving up was not an option. Failure meant death, so we simply didn't allow ourselves to fail. The delegates were listening with growing unease as they began to understand what kind of species they were dealing with. Pressed on, driving home the implications. Those same instincts that made us successful hunters on Earth are what drive our expansion into space. When we identify something we need, we pursue it with absolute determination. When we encounter obstacles, we find ways around them or through them. When we commit to a course of action, we see it through to completion regardless of cost. She gestured to the trade route displays. The improvements I described earlier aren't suggestions, honored delegates. They're inevitabilities. Humans will establish the infrastructure necessary to support our expansion, with or without formal agreements. The only question is whether we do so as partners or as competitors. Coordinator Vex was now clicking his mandibles rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "Are you threatening us, Admiral?" Smile widened, showing her teeth. In human body language, it was a friendly expression. In the context of her species' predatory heritage, it took on a more sinister meaning. "Not at all, Coordinator. I'm simply explaining reality. Humans are going to expand throughout the galaxy because we need to survive and prosper. We're going to improve galactic trade efficiency because it serves our interests. We're going to establish colonies in resource-rich systems because our population growth demands it." She returned to her seat, her manner becoming businesslike again. "The question facing this council is whether you want to be part of that process, sharing in the benefits of human innovation and partnership, or whether you prefer to be obstacles that we need to work around." The chamber erupted in heated discussion as delegates struggled to understand what they were being told. Was this diplomacy or extortion? Partnership or domination? The answer, reflected, depended entirely on how they chose to respond to human expansion. The hegemony delegate, a reptilian species known for their calculating intelligence, raised a clawed hand for attention. "Admiral, you speak of human needs and human expansion as if the rest of the galaxy has no say in the matter. Surely you recognize that other species have legitimate interests that must be respected." Nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, human expansion will take those interests into account whenever possible. We prefer cooperation to conflict because it's more efficient and less costly. But make no mistake, honored delegate, human survival needs take precedence over alien convenience." The blunt statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. No species in galactic history had ever declared such naked self-interest in a diplomatic forum. The implications were staggering. The ethereal representative phased into full reality, their concern overriding their species' usual detachment from physical affairs. "Are you saying that humans consider yourselves superior to other galactic species?" "Not superior," corrected. "More committed to survival. Most galactic species achieved interstellar travel after millions of years of stable evolution on peaceful worlds. You developed technology gradually, in harmony with your environments. Your societies evolved to value cooperation, harmony, and mutual benefit because those traits aided survival in stable ecosystems." She activated a new display showing comparative evolutionary histories. Humans evolved on a death world where cooperation meant survival and competition meant dominance. We developed space travel not because we were curious about the universe, but because we needed more resources to support our expanding population. Every aspect of human civilization is driven by the fundamental imperative to survive and prosper at any cost. The implications hung heavy in the chamber air, allowed the silence to stretch before delivering her final point. "The trade restrictions currently in place will be lifted," she said with quiet certainty. "Not because I'm asking nicely, but because maintaining them will prove more costly than abandoning them. Human commercial vessels will continue operating throughout the galaxy because stopping them would require military action that none of your species are prepared to undertake." She stood again, preparing to leave the chamber. "I want to be absolutely clear about this, honored delegates. Humans are not asking permission to expand into the galaxy. We are informing you that expansion will occur and offering you the opportunity to benefit from partnership with us." As she moved toward the exit, paused for one final observation. "Ambassador Zephyr tried to warn your governments about what kind of species humanity represents. Unfortunately, most of you dismissed her concerns as the exaggerations of a defeated commander. Today's demonstration should clarify any lingering misunderstandings about human intentions or capabilities." The chamber door sealed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving the delegates to contemplate their options. Outside in the corridor, smiled to herself as she heard the heated arguments already beginning inside the conference room. The hunt was proceeding exactly as planned. Some prey ran, some froze, some tried to fight. But eventually all prey learned the same fundamental lesson about apex predators. Resistance was ultimately futile. Admiral made her way back to the Persistence, already composing her report to Earth Command. The demonstration had achieved its intended effect. Within days, the trade restrictions would be quietly lifted as each species calculated the cost of opposing human expansion versus the benefits of accommodation. By the time she reached her ship, had received confirmation that 3 different governments had requested immediate diplomatic meetings to discuss enhanced cooperation with humanity. The galaxy was learning to adapt to its new apex predator. 5 years had passed since Admiral's demonstration at the Nexus Trade Hub, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that even Zephyr's darkest predictions had failed to anticipate. Ambassador Zephyr now served as the Republic's chief liaison to the newly established Human Diplomatic Corps, a position that put her at the center of humanity's inexorable rise to galactic dominance. She stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's and largest space installation, watching the constant stream of ships arriving and departing. The station was positioned at the intersection of 6 major trade routes, its massive bulk serving as both commercial hub and military fortress. Every vessel passing through the region had to acknowledge human authority, pay human fees, and abide by human regulations. The transformation had been so gradual that many species hadn't realized what was happening until it was far too late to reverse course. Human trade improvements had indeed reduced shipping costs and increased efficiency, exactly as Admiral had promised. But those improvements came with strings attached that gradually gave humanity control over galactic commerce. "Ambassador Zephyr," a familiar voice called from behind her. She turned to see Admiral approaching, now wearing the insignia of Supreme Commander of Human Space Forces. The promotion reflected humanity's rapid military expansion over the past 5 years. "Admiral," Zephyr replied with a respectful nod. Despite everything that had happened, she had developed a grudging admiration for the human commander, had never lied about human intentions, never pretended that humanity sought anything other than dominance. Her honesty was refreshing in a political environment filled with species that still couldn't admit what was happening. "I wanted to personally brief you on the latest developments before the council meeting," said, activating a holographic display that materialized between them. "I think you'll find the intelligence reports particularly interesting." The display showed current military deployment throughout the galaxy. Human forces now maintained permanent bases in over 200 systems, with rapid response fleets positioned to reach any major trade route within days. More significantly, human military advisors were now embedded with the armed forces of 18 different species, ostensibly to provide training and coordination against piracy. "The Confederacy has formally requested human assistance with their border disputes," reported. "The Crystalline Consortium wants our help with insurgent mining operations in the Outer Rim. Even the Ethereal Assembly is considering a partnership agreement for joint exploration missions." Zephyr studied the deployment patterns, recognizing the strategic brilliance behind what appeared to be simple military assistance. "You're positioning human forces as the solution to every galactic problem," she observed, "making yourselves indispensable." Smiled, the expression carrying the same predatory undertones that had characterized their first meeting years earlier. "It's a natural evolution, Ambassador. When you're the most effective military force in the galaxy, other species naturally turn to you for protection. When your technology consistently outperforms existing solutions, other species naturally adopt your systems. When your commercial networks offer the best prices and fastest delivery, other species naturally become dependent on your services." The holographic display shifted to show economic data that made Zephyr's breath catch in her throat. Human corporations now controlled 47% of interstellar shipping, 32% of raw material extraction, and 61% of advanced manufacturing. More critically, human financial institutions had become the primary source of credit for major infrastructure projects throughout the galaxy. "How did this happen so quickly?" Zephyr asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Compound interest," replied simply. Humans excel at exponential growth because we evolved in an environment where rapid expansion meant survival. We reinvest profits faster than other species, we scale successful operations more aggressively, and we take calculated risks that more cautious civilizations avoid. She manipulated the display to show human population growth over the past 5 years. The numbers were staggering. Human colonies had tripled in number, with new settlements appearing in previously unexplored systems throughout the galaxy. More significantly, human birth rates in space colonies were exceeding projections, driven by advanced medical technology and abundant resources. We're approaching 8 billion humans in space-based settlements, noted. Within another decade, the majority of human population will be living off Earth. Each new generation is bigger than the last, and each new generation is more adapted to space life than their parents. Zephyr felt a chill as she understood the implications. You're creating a galactic human civilization that will eventually dwarf Earth itself. We're ensuring human survival, corrected. Earth could be destroyed tomorrow, and humanity would continue to thrive throughout the galaxy. No catastrophe, no alien invasion, no natural disaster could threaten our species' existence. We've become too widespread, too numerous, and too deeply integrated into galactic civilization to eliminate. The display changed again, showing something that made Zephyr's heart sink. Genetic analysis charts comparing different human populations revealed that spaceborne humans were already beginning to diverge from their Earthborn cousins. Subtle adaptations to zero gravity, radiation exposure, and artificial environments were appearing in children born on human colonies. You're evolving, Zephyr whispered. Your species is adapting to space faster than anyone thought possible. Nodded approvingly. Humans adapt quickly because we have to, are taught us that evolutionary flexibility is the key to survival. Now we're applying that lesson on a galactic scale. She activated a new set of data, showing human technological development over the past 5 years. Advances in propulsion, weapons systems, life support, and manufacturing had accelerated far beyond the predictions of galactic experts. Human ships were now faster, tougher, and more heavily armed than anything else in space. This is what concerns other species, explained. We're not just expanding faster than they expected, we're improving faster than they thought possible. Every year, human technology becomes more advanced relative to galactic standards. Every year, human military forces become more dominant. Every year, human economic influence becomes more pervasive. Zephyr studied the technological progression charts, recognizing patterns that would have been impossible to predict based on historical galactic development. Your advancement isn't following normal curves, she observed. Most species reach technological plateaus where progress slows down. Humans seem to be accelerating. That's because we're still thinking like hunters, replied. Most galactic species develop technology to improve their quality of life, to make existence more comfortable and secure. Humans develop technology to gain advantage over competitors and to overcome obstacles to expansion. We innovate because we have to stay ahead of potential threats. The holographic display shifted to show military engagement reports from across the galaxy. Human forces had been involved in dozens of conflicts over the past 5 years, always as allies or advisors to existing governments. In every case, human military intervention had proven decisive, often ending conflicts that had raged for decades. The Syndicate War in the Outer Rim ended when human advisors convinced the hegemony to adopt persistence hunting tactics, noted. The Crystalline Revolt was suppressed using human psychological warfare techniques. The border conflicts stopped when human negotiators demonstrated that continued fighting was economically unsustainable. Zephyr recognized the pattern immediately. You're teaching other species to think like humans. We're teaching them to think effectively, corrected. Most galactic conflicts persist because the participants think like prey animals, seeking defensive solutions to aggressive problems. Humans approach conflicts like predators, seeking to eliminate threats permanently rather than simply surviving them. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just conquering the galaxy through military force or economic dominance. They were reshaping galactic civilization by teaching other species to adopt human thinking patterns, human strategic approaches, human solutions to fundamental problems. The council meeting today will formalize what has already become reality, continued. The Galactic Defense Treaty will establish human military forces as the primary peacekeeping authority throughout known space. The Economic Cooperation Accords will standardize galactic trade practices around human commercial protocols. The Technology Sharing Initiative will ensure that human innovations are adopted uniformly across all member species. Zephyr felt the weight of inevitability settling over her. "You've won," she said quietly, "not through conquest but through making yourselves indispensable." His expression grew thoughtful. "We've survived," she replied. "Everything else was just tactics." They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the ships move through space around Harmony Station. Human vessels dominated the traffic patterns, but ships from dozens of species moved alongside them in peaceful cooperation. Whatever else humanity had accomplished, they had created a remarkably stable galactic order. "Can I ask you something, Admiral?" Zephyr said finally. "Do humans ever feel satisfied? Is there a point where expansion stops, where you have enough territory and resources and security?" Consider the question seriously before answering. "That's like asking if we ever stop being human, Ambassador. Expansion, competition, and improvement are fundamental to our nature. We didn't choose to be apex predators any more than you chose to be prey animals. We simply are what evolution made us." She gestured toward the bustling space traffic around them. "But notice that we've created a galaxy where prey species prosper alongside predators. Humans don't benefit from eliminating other civilizations. We benefit from protecting them, trading with them, learning from them. A galaxy full of thriving species provides more opportunities than a galaxy full of human colonies." The holographic display showed one final chart, projecting galactic development over the next century. Human expansion would continue, but so would the growth and prosperity of other species. The galaxy envisioned was diverse, dynamic, and dominated by human institutions that served the interests of all inhabitants. "This is what we offer," said quietly. "Not conquest but leadership, not domination but organization, not the elimination of other species but their protection and guidance under human authority." Zephyr studied the projections, recognizing both the opportunities and the constraints they represented. Other species would prosper under human leadership, but they would never again be truly independent. They would grow and advance, but always within frameworks established by human authority. "And if species refuse this arrangement?" she asked. Smile returned, carrying all the patient confidence of a persistence hunter who knew their prey would eventually tire. "They adapt or they become irrelevant, Ambassador, but most species are discovering that adaptation is more profitable than resistance." The announcement chime sounded throughout the station, calling delegates to the council meeting that would formalize humanity's galactic supremacy. Straightened her uniform and prepared to address the representatives of dozens of species who had gathered to acknowledge what could no longer be. "Thank you for the briefing, Admiral," Zephyr said as they prepared to leave the observation deck. "Your honesty has always been illuminating." Paused at the door, turning back with an expression that combined respect with something that might have been regret. "You tried to warn them, Ambassador. History will remember that you understood what was coming before anyone else." They walked together toward the council chambers. The former fleet commander who had witnessed humanity's first demonstration of galactic power, and the human admiral who had orchestrated their rise to dominance. Behind them, through the observation windows, the galaxy continued its bustling activity under the watchful authority of its new apex predators. In the council chambers, representatives from across known space waited to formally acknowledge what had become undeniable reality. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through warfare or subjugated it through force. Instead, they had made themselves so valuable, so necessary, and so deeply integrated into galactic civilization that resistance had become impossible. The meeting would be brief and largely ceremonial. Documents would be signed, treaties would be, and the new galactic order would receive official recognition. But the real transformation had occurred gradually over 5 years, as species after species discovered that cooperation with humanity offered more benefits than independence from it. Admiral took her place at the head of the council table, looking out at delegates who represented civilizations older and more advanced than humanity in many ways. But none of them had evolved the relentless drive for expansion and dominance that had carried humans from a single planet to galactic supremacy in less than a century. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to threaten or cajole. Today we formalize partnerships that will ensure prosperity and security for all galactic civilizations for generations to come. The irony was not lost on anyone present. In trying to contain humanity's expansion, the galactic community had instead created the conditions that made human dominance inevitable. By treating them as just another spacefaring species, other civilizations had failed to recognize that they were dealing with apex predators who played by entirely different rules. Now, as humanity assumed formal leadership of galactic civilization, Ambassador Zephyr reflected on her failed warnings and the lessons they contained. Perhaps the most important lesson was the simplest. Never underestimate a species that had spent millions of years learning that second place meant extinction. The galaxy had learned that lesson far too late to change the outcome, but perhaps not too late to adapt to the new reality. Under human leadership, they would all survive and prosper. They would simply do so as members of an interstellar civilization shaped by the values, priorities, and instincts of history's most successful apex predators. The reckoning was complete. Humanity had claimed its place at the top of the galactic food chain, and the age of human dominance had officially begun.